Now, Ezekiel did mention Governor Bill Lee taking a look at this case and then making a decision. Let's talk a little bit about that. He did actually release a statement. The governor released a statement saying that Carruthers filed that after he filed that emergency appeal on April 28th. This is what Governor Bill Lee had to say. He said, after deliberate consideration of Tony Von Carruthers' request for clemency and after a thorough review of the case, I am upholding the sentence of the state of Tennessee and do not plan to intervene. The ACLU also with a statement coming out, having things to say as well. The American Civil Liberties Union and the ACLU of Tennessee both filing those emergency requests asking the court to stop the execution. Attorneys claim the state is holding untested DNA and fingerprint evidence that does not match Carruthers. They also point to an alternative suspect identified years ago by Carruthers' co-defendant. The ACLU is arguing that the request for DNA testing was delayed after the Tennessee courts sent the case back and forth between judicial levels in the weeks leading up to the execution date. Supporters of Carruthers actually delivered a petition with more than 130,000 signatures to Governor Bill Lee this week, urging him to stop the execution. But again, the governor has said he did not plan to intervene. Now, if the execution does move forward as scheduled, Tennessee will use lethal injection. So if that execution has happened, and to be honest with you, by now, if it is going to happen, then it will have happened by now. These executions traditionally run on schedule. They do not delay unless there is a stay of execution. So they traditionally run as scheduled. So if that execution has happened, then if it was going forward, then it has happened by this time today. If it did happen, they used lethal injection, which is the state's primary method of execution. Now, under Tennessee protocol, the inmate is strapped to a gurney inside the execution chamber. That's at Riverbend Maximum Security in Nashville. Witnesses, including the victim's family members, media representatives, and attorneys, are all allowed to observe from a separate room. Now, the inmate is given an opportunity to make a final statement before a lethal injection process begins. Now, it is a process of several chemicals when they do the lethal injection. A physician then has to confirm the death, and the execution is formally declared completed by the state. That is traditionally done with some type of an alert or a press release or something, because they'll have an exact time of death whenever they do that release. Now, in Tennessee, death row inmates go through a lengthy appeals process, and it can actually last for decades. As you've heard with the Tony Carruthers case, he's been trying for decades to get a change or a stay or a halt of the execution. After a conviction and death sentence, the case is automatically reviewed by the Tennessee Supreme Court. Inmates can then file additional appeals in state and federal courts, challenging issues like constitutional violations, mental competency, or even claims of innocence. Now, once all of those are exhausted, though, attorneys can actually seek last-minute stays of execution or request clemency from the governor. They did both of those things in this case. None of those were accepted. So there were no unless something happened this morning, all of the appeals leading up to today had been denied. In the case of Tony Carruthers, courts have repeatedly upheld his conviction and death sentence over the past 3 decades. So reality star Kim Kardashian actually joined the efforts to prove the innocence of Tony Carruthers, or at least ask for a stay of execution. In an Instagram post, she encouraged her fans to call Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's office and urged the governor to test the DNA evidence before it's too late. Now, we have been following this breaking news all morning. This is the scheduled execution day of convicted Memphis triple murderer Tony Carruthers. Now, this is from the 1994 murder that shook the Mid-South. He was scheduled to be executed at 10 a.m. this morning. It is now 10:20. We have not heard official word yet from the state on whether or not that execution has taken place. If a stay was given, it would have had to happen early this morning at probably the last minute before the execution was taking place. We have not heard word if a stay of execution was given. We do know that Governor Bill Lee had already announced that he would not intervene. He would not create a stay of execution for Tony Carruthers. So it would have had to have been a high court handing down an emergency stay of execution in order for this execution to not take place this morning. We have not gotten word of any high court intervention in this morning's execution plan, and we have not gotten word on whether or not this morning's execution has actually moved forward. So we are all waiting for the final word on if this execution has actually went forward or if there was a stay at the last minute. As soon as we know which direction it went, we will let you know so we can continue this coverage. All right, we've been following this story for weeks and been following this breaking news all morning long. Now, the execution was supposed to take place, is scheduled to take place at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. Now, Carruthers was convicted in one of Memphis's most notorious murder cases from back in 1994. Marcellus Anderson, his mother Deloise Anderson, and Frederick Tucker all found dead and buried beneath a grave in South Memphis. We're continuing to bring you live TV coverage about this all morning long. Let's get you to a timeline of the events in case maybe you weren't here or you forgot about some of the details of the case. This is what the case is. This is how it unfolds. In 1994, 3 people disappeared in Memphis. Days later, investigators made a gruesome discovery at Rose Hill Cemetery in South Memphis. Now, the prosecutors alleged at that time that Marcellus Anderson, his mother Deloise, and Frederick Tucker were all kidnapped and then buried in a grave beneath a casket that was actually prepared for another funeral. Investigators testified that some victims were actually still alive when they were buried. Tony Carruthers and his co-defendant James Montgomery were later convicted and then sentenced to death. Carruthers represented himself during portions of the trial after repeated disputes with his attorneys. Now, over the decades, he has filed several appeals claiming his innocence, claiming mental health concerns, and even constitutional violations. But each time, the Tennessee courts have repeatedly upheld his conviction and his death sentence.